up here. Please don't go. We're going to talk about what the King James Version calls the meat offering. Some people call it the meal offering. Some people call it the grain offering. Our second chapter, she goes, "How's it going so far?" And I said, "Let me tell you something. This is one of the best books, I believe, in the Old Testament that there is. Just so much picturesque language. Let's read all 16 verses and then go back through it and pick it apart. I think that way everybody's kind of at least read it one time, if they haven't. It says in verse number 1, "And when any will offer a meat offering unto the Lord, his offering shall be of fine flour. And he shall pour oil upon it and put frankincense thereon. And he shall bring it to Aaron's sons, the priest, and he shall take thereout his handful of the flour thereof, and of the oil thereof, with all the frankincense thereof. And the priest shall burn the memorial of it upon the altar, to be an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. And the remnant of the meat offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is a thing most holy of the offerings of the Lord made by fire. And if thou bring an oblation an oblation in the King James simply means an offering. But I'm going to depict that word, I'm going to take it down a little bit more than that because it's important. But it says, if thou verse 4, bring an oblation of a meat offering baken in the oven, it shall be unleavened cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, or unleavened wafers anointed with oil. And if thy oblation be a meat offering baken in a pan, it shall be a fine flour unleavened mingled with oil. Thou shalt part it in pieces and pour oil thereon. It is a meat offering. And if thy oblation be a meat offering baken in the frying pan, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. And thou shalt bring the meat offering that is made of these things unto the Lord. And when it is presented unto the priest, he shall bring it unto the altar." Now, let me stop for just 1 second. As we just go through and read this, it's like, what does all this have to do with us? What does all this have to do with Jesus? What does all this have to do with worshiping God? It sounds like we're making bread, right? Well, that's because that's what we're doing. J. Vernon McGee said it best. He said, in Levitic from the meat offering, a memorial thereof, and shall burn it upon the altar. It is an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. And that which is left of the meat offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is a thing most holy of the offerings of the Lord made by fire. No meat offering which ye shall bring unto the Lord shall be made with leaven, for ye shall burn no leaven, nor any honey in any offering of the Lord made by fire. As for the oblation of the first fruits, ye shall offer them unto the Lord, but they shall not be burnt on the altar for a sweet savor. And every oblation of thy meat offering shalt thou season with salt, neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant. We'll talk more about the salt of the covenant when we get to it. Of thy God to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt. And if thou offer a meat offering of thy first fruits unto the Lord, thou shalt offer for the meat offering of thy first fruits green ears of corn, dried by the fire, even corn beaten out of full ears. And thou shalt put oil upon it and lay frankincense thereon. It is a meat offering. And the priest shall burn the memorial of it, part of the beaten corn thereof, and part of the oil thereof, with all the frankincense thereof. It is an offering made by fire unto the Lord. Now, let's stop. When I read that entire chapter, what stuck out to you? And it's going to be different for everybody. There's some things that were said over and over. There's some things that you're going to, as you read that chapter, you're going to link to the New Testament. But what's some things that stick out to you when I talk about meat offering, fine flour, oil, frankincense? Mm-hmm. The frankincense part? Okay, what else? Uh-huh. You know, here's one thing that I think about. This is a bloodless sacrifice. There's no blood involved. None whatsoever. And that's one of the things that's missing from this. You know, you would think as you look at the offerings, you would think, especially in the pagan culture, generally everything carried blood. But here's what's so interesting about that. People that had no idea about history, people that have no idea about biblical times, according to the Old Testament, they look at God and they say, wow, God's a killer. That's what they think. Well, I mean, my goodness, what is God, just bloodthirsty, or what's the deal with them? But right here we have a bloodless offering that's being taken up. Here's the other thing. Pagans generally would offer children as sacrifices. God never asked for that. Not one time. I will say this, and we know this as we've been going through the books of the Bible, but God did say that anything that cometh out of the matrix or the womb, the first is His. It's a first fruit. That's His. Now, that does not mean He's never once asked for a child sacrifice. Not one time. As a matter of fact, when you get in the New Testament, He says, "Suffer ye not the little children to come unto me." So why would God, if God looks at the child in the womb as a reward, as a heritage, why would He ask people to sacrifice them? He wouldn't. He wouldn't. But I do find that very interesting. But here's the thing. When we just read this at first glance, we think, oh, yeah, here our mindset mentality, find flour, go to Kroger. Can't do that here. You can't do that. This is going to take some work. Anybody ever grind flour before? Or grind that? Yeah? Uh-huh. But when you would grind it, there would be some chunks, right? There's no chunks in this. So, and here's the thing. They're not this like vast knowledge of people that have this, these mills set up. I mean, this isn't, Kentucky. They don't have grist mills set up. And what would they do? They would take literally a bowl, a rock bowl, and probably another rock, and sit there and grind. This would take work. Here's the thing. God says, give me the absolute best that you have. It's not just flour. It's fine flour. God says, that's what I want. That's what I deserve. So when people do this here, and notice that that's crushed. That's important. That's crushed. We would call it crushed. We would call it maybe sifted. But I will say this: even sifting, you still got some chunks. But as you get here, it says, and when any will, verse 1, and when any will offer a meat offering unto the Lord, his offering shall be of fine flour, and he shall pour oil upon it. So here it says that the oil is poured on top of it. And put frankincense thereon. So now the frankincense is added. Verse 2. And he shall bring it to Aaron's sons the priest, and he shall take thereout his handful of the flour thereof, and oil thereof, with all the frankincense thereof, and the priest shall burn the memorial of it upon the altar, to be an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. And the remnant of the meat offering shall be Aaron's and his sons. It is a thing most holy of the offerings of the Lord made by fire. Now, this is an offering of thanksgiving. God says, I want the best. It's going to take you some work. It's going to cost you some time. It's going to cost you some money. But here's the thing. You think about this. As you go down through here, this first part of this offering is just kind of throw the stuff together. Don't mix it up. Just throw it together. Just throw it in the bowl, whatever, and get it here. It's going to further go on. Well, if they do it this way, They're going to mix it up and they're going to make cakes out of it. Or wafers out of it. And there's a little bit of a difference between those two things. A cake would be perforated, kind of a bread-like substance, a little bit thicker. But a wafer would be literally like a thin cake, thin. I don't know, maybe even like a pancake, as thin as a pancake. You ever take pancake batter, stick it in the fridge overnight, and then cook it the next day? Anybody ever do that? You want thin pancakes? That's how you do it. That's how you do it. You want big, fat, fluffy pancakes? Cook it immediately. But if you want them thin, my dad, I've known that. I'll never forget that. My dad told me that one time. I said, why are you putting that pancake batter in the fridge? He said, because I don't like pancakes that all you do is just pour syrup on them. He said, I like them thin where they don't soak up the syrup. And that's what he would do. Set the pancake batter in the fridge overnight, and they're not thin. They're thin. Correct. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We didn't have one of those T-handled things, but it literally, I mean, they are nothing. And I thought that was really weird. But I remember that as a kid. But this is an offering of thanksgiving, saying, God, thank you for the blessing that you have given us. Thank you for providing for us in this area. You know, go ahead. You're dying to say something. Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's a volunteer.
Yes. Yes.
So, take what that costs labor and time.
Yeah.
But you're volunteering.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. He says, it says right there in the very first verse, and when any will offer, if they will, it's free will. Again, chapter 1, free will. Chapter 2, free will. God's not forcing for us to do anything, although some people will push that God does that. But this part of the offering is it's all thrown together in the bowl. Now, here's the thing. So the oil has been poured upon it. Things are going to change. Okay? Look at verse number 4. And if thou bring an oblation of a meat offering baken in the oven, it shall be unleavened cakes of fine flour mingled with oil. So now it's mixed up. First, it was just poured on it. Now it's mixed up. And then next it's going to say with. Put the oil with. If thou bring an oblation of a meat offering baken in the oven, it shall be unleavened cakes of fine flour mingled with oil, or unleavened wafers anointed. Anointed with. Here's the thing. As you look at this, you're probably thinking to yourself, what's the importance of the oil? We know what the importance or the significance of oil in the Bible is. It is a picture of the Holy Spirit. Now, when you look at this offering, it doesn't matter which part of it you look at. The oil is there. It's either on, it's with it, it's in it, it's all over the place. Perfect picture of Christ. Perfect picture of Christ. Verse 5. Somebody say something? Thought I heard someone. Verse 5, and if thy oblation be a meat offering baken in a pan, it shall be a fine flour, unleavened, mingled with oil. Thou shalt part it in pieces, and pour oil thereon. It is a meat offering. Now, I do want to stop for just one second, because verse number 6, this is the only part that you see. And I have looked at and listened to commentator after commentator, and they completely go over verse 6. That was one of the verses that stuck out to me out of the whole entire chapter was verse 6. And literally it was this part, thou shalt part it in pieces. You say, why is that important? Why is that important to you? Why did you catch that? Why is that pressed on you? It is pressed on me. And I'm not saying that those guys missed it. I'm just saying I'm sure they probably know it. But I didn't hear one of them say it. And what I thought about was, this is the guy that's bringing this offering. And he is literally taking this bread and he is breaking it into pieces. Now, why does that sound familiar in the New Testament? Sounds like the Lord's Supper, don't it? That's what I thought of. Whenever I was like, wait a second. I was like, Jesus said, I am the bread of life. Remember when he said, this is my body broken for you? We do this in remembrance of him. And I thought, man, that is so interesting. Here's the thing. He's laid on the altar for us. Here's the thing. We broke him. We broke him. You say, I didn't break him. Yeah, you did too. Your sin broke him. The whole purpose of his coming was because of our sin. Collectively, all of our sin. And I just thought that was very interesting that it says, thou shalt part it in pieces, pour oil thereon. It is a meat offering. I've also heard other people say, yeah, the aspect of Christ is all over this chapter, but also the aspect of us is all over this chapter. This is a labor of us. Now, we're not laboring to be saved. We're laboring because we labor because we are saved. And so this is their labors, right? Would you agree with that? Yeah, I mean, they're bringing this offering. They're the ones who is doing the work. And so I could see that as well. Verse number 7. And if thy oblation be a meat offering baken in the frying pan, it shall be made of fine flour with oil. So there's the other difference in where the oil is going to be at and how it's going to be used. And thou shalt bring the meat offering that is made of these things unto the Lord. And when it is presented unto the priest, he shall bring it unto the altar. And the priest shall take from the meat offering a memorial thereof and shall burn it upon the altar. It is an offering made by fire of a sweet savor unto the Lord. Let me ask you a question. You ever get into a place and you think, I'm just like stuck here and I can't do anything for the Lord? You ever feel like that? Anybody? I mean, just raise your hand. You ever feel like I'm stuck in this place and I don't feel like it? Listen, they're glorifying God through their kitchen. I mean, as you look at it, it's like somebody's at home baking this stuff. Somebody's at home grinding this up. Somebody's at home pressing the olives to get the oil out of. Somebody has to pay for that frankincense. That wasn't cheap. That stuff's not cheap. It is a costly thing. And here's the thing. God says every bit of it, when you bring it in the right way and in the right mannerisms and in the right heart, it's a free will offering. Like you said, it is your will. You want to give this to me. But if you're going to give it to me, this is the ways that I will accept it. When you do that, that's a sweet savor unto the Lord when it's burnt. I don't know about you, but I love bread. Here's what kind of bread I'm not really fond of. Unleavened bread. I'm not. It doesn't have that great of a taste. But I will say this, unleavened bread is more pure than leavened bread. And God has a significant way that he brings out, this is how I want the bread offered. Anybody got anything, though, before we get to that? Yeah, go ahead. Old English. It's Old English. It would be like meat, meal, grain. When you look at that, don't let that literally a food offering is what some people will call it. Don't let meat hang you up. Just in the context, you'll see it's fine flour, and just know that, okay, it's talking about grain. Nah. Yeah. Yeah. And that is the thing about I love the King James Version. There's no other Bible, to me personally, that when you read it, it makes you study it. That is the great thing about the Bible. I love it very much. I do. I want to dig into it, and I want to see, what do these words mean? I just don't want to be told by somebody else. That could or could not be wrong. I don't know. They may be, maybe not. But I love the way that the Bible makes you study it, not just read it. Because if we just read it, meat, Well, I didn't see no meat. I'm thinking pork chops and 2 sides, right? Yeah, something. Anybody else? Talk about that word oblation real quick. It does mean offering, but it means to come, and I want you to keep this in the back of your noggin. It does mean offering, but it also means to come near or to bring yourself present. So remember that, because I think sometimes when we pass these plates around, we call it the offering, right? Think about that for just a second. When you are offering, when you are putting in an offering, doesn't matter if it's financial, doesn't matter if it's labor, doesn't matter if you have something that the church can use, whatever the case may be. Always make sure you remember that when you present that, you are presenting yourself before the Lord and saying, this is what I have. This is what I have, and I want to give it to you. You're not giving it to me. I mean, you're not giving it to the people here. If it's something that you can offer to the church, you're really not, in a sense, giving it to us. You're giving it to the Lord, and then the Lord is using it to bless other people. So always remember that. Now, other people can get, gain out of it. I mean, I sure am glad that we have air conditioning in this building. Sometimes it's like we're running the heat. I don't know. Maybe it's me, but I'm glad we have the comforts that we have. But here's the thing. People offered to the church so that could be done. And the Lord says, hey, bless my people, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree. It's we look at that. We look at passing the plate around. We think of communal, but really that's a bunch of singular people making up, and it's offerings that make up an offering. So definitely don't shy away from it. Make sure that you are doing what the Lord would have you to do. You'll not hear me one time ever preach on a tithe. I won't put that burden on anybody to say, hey, you have to give 10%. You give. Here's the thing. The Lord says, if you don't want to give it, I don't want it. It's got to be free will. And you have a free will. And if you want to give. If whatever the Lord lays on your heart to give, do it. That's between you and Him, not between me and you. I can't stand those guys that get up and preach on money all the time. It's like, whatever you want to give. I mean, if you want to give $5 or if you want to give $500, that's between you and God. That's not between you and us. It has nothing to do. Now, I will say I've heard of places that actually force you, if you're a member, you have to tithe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in a way, yes. Again, I'll tell you this. If you don't want to tithe, God don't want it if you don't want to. He'll take somebody's 5% that's willing to give it and use it in a much mightier way and bless them more than somebody that's just like, well, I'll just give 10% because that's what I'm told. I'm not going to tell you to give 10%. I'm not going to tell you to give 15, 20%. I will say this. I will not tell you to not give. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, we don't put that. That's crazy. And I think that's not. I have heard preachers say that if you'll give 10%, and that which is left of the meat offering shall be Aaron's and his sons, And here's the thing, you think about these guys are all tangled up with all the services that are going on at the temple. How do they ever have time to get out and work to provide for their own families? Well, God said, I'll take care of that. As people bring a free will offering, you'll get portions of this. So God takes care of everybody in God's economy. Verse 11, no meat offering, which ye shall bring unto my bread to taste like what bread should taste like. I don't want it soured, because if we know that leaven, when it's put into bread, it can turn into sourdough. And then we pinch a little piece of that off, it sours the bread. God said, I don't want that. I want the real deal thing. I want the unleavened bread. Now, he also says, I don't want any artificial sweeteners on it either. No honey. Here's the thing. This is the good thing. You say, how does that tie to this? Well, Jesus is the bread of life. Jesus, nothing sour about Jesus, nothing really kind of flattery about Jesus either, which was what honey would do. Has all these artificial sweeteners in it. And God says, that's not what we want. He said, this is what I want. I want bread in its purest form. And he says, I don't want anything artificial added to it. I don't want anything to sour the bread. I don't want anything to make the bread sweet in an artificial way. This is how I want it to be. Now, you can have different opinions of that. That's just one thing that I was thinking of. But does anybody else got anything to that? Listen, and here's the thing. The other night, my wife went to Popeyes and got some of their biscuits. And you know the first thing I put on them biscuits? Not leaven. Honey. And I'm telling you, I got a blessing out of it. I'm just here to tell you, so much so that I went back for seconds. And they're amazing. They're amazing. But God says, I don't want that. You see, we have to be pacified. God says, I don't have to be pacified. You guys don't have to give me the stuff that you think is good, the stuff that you think really it's rotten. He says, I don't want that. He said, I want it in its purest form. Verse number 12, as for the oblation of the first fruits, ye shall offer them unto the Lord, but they shall not be burnt on the altar for a sweet savor. And every oblation of thy meat offering shalt thou season with salt, neither shalt thou suffer the salt of the covenant of thy God to be lacking from thy meat offering. With all thine offerings thou shalt offer salt. Salt of the covenant. It's only mentioned 3 times in the Bible. It's mentioned here. It's mentioned in the book of Numbers, chapter 18 and verse 19, and also in 2 Chronicles, chapter 13, verse 5. What in the world is the salt of the covenant, or the covenant of salt? There's actually a few different people that say a few different things about this. Some people will say that two men would meet, and it was literally like you were taking somebody's word for it. They would say, well, we'll have this covenant. We'll do this covenant of salt. And the person that generally was more well off would bring more of the salt. And it's so crazy. But you would take, and here's the thing, salt was an expensive thing back then. They would take the salt and they would put it in their mouth and eat it. That's one way that I've heard it was done. I also heard another way, that somebody would bring bread and they would pour salt on the bread and they would rip the bread and they would both eat the salted bread, making a covenant between two people. I like a good old just sign on the dotted line myself, but it's just some of the things that they did. But God generally doesn't do anything that culture does, because he just said in the verse before that he doesn't want it with honey. Why would he not want it with honey? Well, one reason I believe is he doesn't want any artificial sweeteners on it. But second reason is pagans would offer honey to their gods. So interesting. They would offer it to their little g gods, and now God is like, you know the covenant of the salt. You know this. But with God, it meant something totally different than what it meant between two people. Don't break the covenant between us. With God, it meant 3 things. 1, it's a pure covenant. Salt is not able to change. People will go to the book of, what is it in the Gospels where the Bible, Jesus says, if the salt has lost its savor, they'll say, oh, see, their salt's changed. No, it hasn't changed. It was people were putting in fillers with it and changing the contents of what you were actually buying. It wasn't just salt. It had stuff added to it. Salt does not change. Salt is pure. Secondly, salt preserves. It stops flesh rot. That's important for sinners, isn't it? And that's why Jesus said, beware, Hold on, I'll think of it here. We'll come back to it. But it's pure, it's preserving, and it's precious. It cost a lot of money back then. As a matter of fact, they would pay Roman soldiers in salt. That's where we get, you ever think about like those analogies that people use, making money hand over fist? Where does these things come from? Well, whenever somebody says you're worth your weight in salt, that's what it means. He's worth his salt. They would pay them in salt. That's interesting, ain't it? If somebody was to hand you a thing of Morton salt and say, there you go, that's your paycheck for the week, we would be ticked, wouldn't we? Yeah, exactly. Throw it in our eyes, right? Cause a little burn. I mean, seriously, we would be upset. But back then, it's a very, very precious thing. And it still is. Let me say this. If we didn't have refrigerators, what would we do? Salt. It would become a humongous, thing that we would need in our time to be able to preserve meat. We've got it so good. We really do. But I will say this, we're one more pandemic away from really getting hammered hard. I'm telling you, people thought toilet paper and stuff like that was bad. Listen, I'm telling you, I don't know if anybody in here had to deal with it or not, but we were running out of equipment to sell people. You know what people will stop using? They'll stop using toilet paper, but they will not stop going to that thermostat and turning it down. I'm telling you, we are so comfortable. When the first sign of no comfort, we're in a tizzy and we're ready to pull our own hair out. It is sad, but guys, I'm telling you, this system, this chain is so weak and so fragile, we have no idea. Look at our shelves, how they went bare in that time. And I'm not trying to get on politics or anything like that. I'm just telling you common everyday scenes. And then people, when you would come and you would buy the big pack of toilet paper and put it in the car, people would be behind you talking about, well, they're doing stockpiling. You see what happens? It went from the food chain and the chain of getting stuff, the chain supply chain, to people turning on people because they thought you were a prepper. We're fragile, guys. We're fragile. And when our comforts are gone, it's not good for us. Go to the sink and turn your water on and let no water come out. You will be on the phone with the water company within 2 minutes. Yeah, if the lights go off. Oh, yeah, we're calling Chrissy. Seriously, let the battery die in your car, and you go out there and you go to start it, and it don't start. The money that you had set aside for, this bill and this bill, all of a sudden now you have money for a battery in your car. Guys, we will not do without the comforts of this life. I really wonder. It's why it's such an eye-opener when people go to a third world country and they come back and they're just on fire for the Lord. It's like, what are you so on fire for? Because you didn't see what I seen. And how those people live. It is insane to us. But if it come down to it, we would either do it or we would die. Anybody got anything? We're almost there. Verse 14. And if thou offer a meat offering of thy first fruits unto the Lord, thou shalt. Now here's the thing about the first fruits. Well, geez, Pete's. I mean, God. So you want the very first? Like, well, wait a second. What if I don't have anything after that? What if there is no second fruits? Right? That's how we think. It would be like the first cut of hay. What do you generally get? 2 cuts, 3 cuts of hay? Brother John, what do you generally get? How many cuts of hay do you generally get? 2, sometimes 3, sometimes.
One, if we're lucky in Colorado.
Yeah. Well, it's so dry out there. Yeah. But generally, the more the cuts, the better the product. But yeah, you're right. In Colorado, you're lucky if you found any. I know people that drove over 4 hours to get hay because they just couldn't get it. But so, okay, here's the thing. You only got one. You get your first cut. God says, that's mine. Boy, it gets tight, don't it? Well, God, last time. And he says, it's either you're going to give it to me or you're not. And if you don't give it to me, you're going to be the one hurting. You will be the one hurting. You see, people look at that and they'll say, if I give it to him, I'm hurting. No, if you give it to him, you're blessed. Because he's asked for it. And he says, if you want to give it to me, you ought to give it to him cheerfully. And saying, God, this is yours. This is what you asked for, and I'm giving you what you asked for because I want to, not because you asked for it. Isn't it great? We were leaving the house, and Noah, he's in a good mood today. And we got a little that little berm that sits right there by the fence, and I was sitting there trying to look out of the back of the car. I was like, Livia, where is he at? Because he was riding his bike. She was like, I don't know, I can't see him now. And I was like, well, I ain't moving. And I look up, and he's standing on that berm, and he's like, telling me to come back. And so I back up, and he's like, it does that. And I roll down my window, and I looked at him, and I said, hey, I love you. And he said, can I give you a hug? I said, yeah, man. I'm telling you, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. And, now tomorrow when he wakes up screaming and kicking, it's going to be like, I'm going to have to remember what he did on the berm. But, that it is a blessing that, that I get to see that. I get to see it. All the time I get to see it. If I'll just look for it. God says, this is, I want the first fruits. And he says there in verse number 15, and thou shalt put oil upon it. So now it's on it, and lay frankincense thereon. It is a meat offering, and the priest shall burn the memorial of it, part of the beaten corn thereof, and part of the oil thereof, with all the frankincense thereof. It is an offering made by fire unto the Lord. Now, here's the thing that I was going to tell you. As I went through this entire chapter, of course, you see all the shadowing of Christ. You get to see all that. We call them shadows because you don't get the full picture. You just see little bits and pieces, and you kind of put the puzzle together, and you definitely get the full puzzle put together in the New Testament. But I got to thinking about a guy in the New Testament whenever I was reading this about the flower and about all this, and I was thinking, man, it's so amazing to me to read these things and start to think about, how can we make this applicable? How can we take this and in Romans 12, it says that we are to present our bodies a living sacrifice. And there is things that we go through on a day-to-day basis. And we think, how in the world is God going to get glory out of this? I'm going through this trial. I'm going through these tragedies. I'm getting, and I'm going to say it right now, sifted as wheat. Peter, I was thinking about Peter. And the Lord looking at him and saying, listen, Simon, Satan had desired to have you that he may sift you as wheat. But, the next verse says, but I have prayed for thee. I prayed for you. Now, here's the thing. He's going to sift all of you. But I'm praying for you, big guy, because you think you're up here and you're not up there. Remember, this was right after he said, well, I'll die for you. And he didn't at that time. He says, but I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not, and when thou art converted, strengthen brethren. This is what I want you to do, Peter. Here's the thing. I'm praying for you. You're going to go through this. And notice, he doesn't, could he have taken the trials away? Sure he could have. But I'm telling you, if he would have never taken those trials away, he would have never ended up in Acts chapter number 2. He would have never seen those many thousands of people get saved, because he had to be sifted first. And saying, Peter, you're not who you think you are in your heart. Careful. And it's just an amazing picture of how God just works things out for us. Anybody got anything? All right. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I watch old shows. You watch. It's so funny watching the Twilight Zone the other night, and sitting there just watching it, not thinking. And it was like they pulled off to use a payphone. And I'm like, man, I remember those. I remember the airport used to be loaded with them. You remember that? I mean, there was this big, center in the middle of the walkway. People all on payphones. I remember the first time that there was the Bluetooth earpieces come out. I was sitting in an airport in Dallas, Texas, and I'm sitting beside this guy, and I don't see a cell phone. And I hear him go, hello. I look over at him, I'm just staring at him. I'm like, what in the world? I couldn't see the other ear. He had an earpiece in. And I was like, what in the world is going on? And then he turned and I was like, oh, yeah, he's got one of those things on. But you see these old shows and stuff, and they're like, I couldn't get a hold of you from the highway. And I'm like, how could you? Well, never mind. and so we're so comfortable now. Let somebody not answer their phone when you need them. Oh, man. It's like, they're not my friend anymore. What do you mean? We're